If you think the internet is the scary part, you're wrong. The worst part is walking into work and realizing someone you know has already seen you, and they're not keeping it to themselves. I used to believe privacy was something you could manage with settings and passwords, like if you just did it smart enough, kept your face out of frame, never showed your street, never said your real name, you could live 2 lives and keep them from touching. I'm in my early 30s. I live outside Manchester, in a quiet estate where everyone pretends they don't notice everyone else. Rows of identical houses, same gray fences, same bins left out too long, same morning at the corner shop. I was with my partner, Lewis, for 6 years. It wasn't always rosy, but we got along. We were the kind of couple that could sit in the same room and feel safe in the silence. We were saving for a bigger place, talking about next year like it was a promise. He worked maintenance for a large hotel. I handled admin for a small logistics company. Steady pay, boring desk, fluorescent lights, the smell of printer toner stuck in my hair by Friday. Then everything got expensive. Rent jumped. My mom's health started wobbling. Nothing dramatic at first, but appointments and prescriptions and that exhausted look she tried to hide. Lewis did overtime. I cut corners. I stopped buying little things that made life feel normal. And still, the numbers didn't add up. So I did what a lot of people do now, quietly, without telling anyone. I made an account. It wasn't some wild fantasy thing. It was controlled, anonymous, mostly photos, some short videos, nothing with my face. I cropped out everything recognizable. I filmed in a spare room with the curtains pulled, a cheap ring light, my phone balanced on a stack of books. I had rules, no personal messages that felt too intimate, no location hints, no talk about my job, no talk about my real life. And at first, it worked. I paid off 2 credit cards. I booked my mom a private scan that the NHS waiting list would have stretched into months. I bought Lewis the boots he'd been putting off. I told myself it was temporary, a bridge, a secret I could carry without it leaking into anything that mattered. I didn't feel brave, I felt careful. I felt like someone walking across a frozen lake, placing my feet down softly, listening for cracks. The first crack was a notification that didn't belong. It was a Tuesday morning, cold enough that my breath fogged the car window. I'd parked outside work, engine off, hands wrapped around a takeaway coffee that was already going lukewarm. My phone buzzed in my lap, and I glanced down expecting an email from my manager. Instead, it was a message request from an account with no profile picture and a username that meant nothing. It said they knew me. Just that. 3 words. No emojis, no compliment, no crude request. They knew me. My throat tightened so fast it felt like I'd swallowed a dry piece of bread. My fingers went numb, and I realized I'd been squeezing the cup so hard the cardboard sleeve was bending. I told myself it was bait. People say things. People pretend. I deleted the request, blocked the account, and sat there staring at the steering wheel until my heart slowed down enough that I could breathe without that sharp little hitch. I walked into the office, pretending I wasn't shaking. Work was the usual. Phones ringing, keyboards clacking, the stale heat of the radiator fighting the damp outside. I nodded at coworkers. I smiled when I had to. I kept my shoulders relaxed, like I wasn't replaying those 3 words over and over. Around lunch, I went to the women's bathroom and checked my phone again, hiding in a stall like a teenager. Another request. Different account. This one didn't just say they knew me. It described something in my house, not the inside of the room, not the curtains. Something I'd missed. Something so stupid it made my stomach drop. A chipped mug I sometimes used as a prop because it looked homey. White ceramic with a faded blue line near the rim. It had been a gift from Lewis's sister years ago, and I kept it because I'm the kind of person who keeps things too long. The message said, in plain text, that mug was on my counter last Sunday. My skin went hot, then cold. I could feel sweat start under my arms, my blouse sticking. I flushed the toilet just so it would make noise, like noise could cover the sound of my thoughts spiraling. How could they know that? I didn't show my kitchen. I didn't show the counter. I didn't show anything but a corner of a wall and that stupid mug on a table in the background for maybe 2 seconds. 2 seconds was enough. My brain ran through possibilities like it was slamming doors in a hallway, a neighbor through a window, someone I knew who'd been in my house, Lewis, his sister, a co-worker who'd come over for a drink once, years ago, a friend from school. I blocked that account too. I checked my settings. I deleted content with the mug. I changed the angle of the room. I moved furniture. I shoved that mug into the back of a cupboard like it was evidence. That night at home, I tried to act normal. Lewis was on the sofa, boots off, socks damp from rain, watching a match replay. The living room light was warm and yellow, the only soft thing in the day. He patted the cushion beside him. I sat, but my body didn't settle. My leg bounced without permission. My palms kept going slick. He asked what was wrong. I told him it was work stress. It wasn't a lie exactly, it was just not the full truth. Later, in bed, he fell asleep fast. I stayed awake, phone brightness turned down, scrolling through my own posts, hunting for tiny details like a detective who hates the case. I started seeing my life the way a stranger would. The pattern on the carpet, the cheap lamp, the reflection in a window, the sound of the street outside. I felt like my home had become a set, and I didn't know which prop would betray me next. The next day, it got worse. A coworker named Jade, newer, younger, always talking a little too loudly, stood behind my desk while I typed. I could feel her presence like heat. She didn't say anything at first. She just lingered, leaning a hip against the filing cabinet, tapping her nails on the metal. Then she said casually that she'd seen a girl online who looked a bit like me. My hands froze over the keyboard. I kept my eyes on the screen like it mattered, like the spreadsheet was life or death. She laughed. It wasn't friendly. It was that light laugh people do when they want you to chase them for the punchline. She said it was probably nothing, that lots of girls look the same, that the internet is weird like that. Then she walked away and I realized I'd been holding my breath. The rest of the day, my chest felt tight, like there was a belt cinched around my ribs. Every time someone walked past my desk, I flinched inside. I kept checking my reflection in the dark computer monitor, making sure my face wasn't giving me away. That evening, when I got home, there was a plain white envelope on the doormat. No return address. My name handwritten on the front in neat, careful letters. My stomach dropped so hard I felt it in my knees. I picked it up like it might bite. The paper was thick, the flap sealed properly, the kind of envelope used for official letters. Lewis was in the kitchen. He called out asking if the post had come. My voice came out thin when I said yes. I waited until he went upstairs to shower. I stood at the counter under the harsh kitchen light, the same counter the message had mentioned, and I slid my finger under the flap. Inside was a single sheet of printer paper, a screenshot, not of my face, not of a full video, just a cropped image, my body from the collarbone down, framed the way I always framed it, anonymous and safe. Under it, typed in black, were 6 words. We know. Don't make this messy. My mouth went dry. My hands shook so hard the paper crackled. I set it down and pressed my palms flat on the counter, like I could hold myself together by force. From upstairs the shower ran, water pounding, normal life continuing, and I realized with a slow sinking certainty that this wasn't going to stay online. Someone had crossed into my real world. Someone had walked up to my front door, and they wanted me to know they could do it again. I didn't tell Lewis about the letter. I slid it back into the envelope, hands still trembling, and shoved it into the back of a kitchen drawer under old takeaway menus. My heart was thumping so hard it made my ears pulse. I kept swallowing like that would push the panic down. When Lewis came back downstairs, hair damp, smelling like soap, he kissed my forehead and asked what I wanted for dinner. I said I wasn't hungry. He looked at me for a second longer than usual, but then he just nodded and started talking about work, some guest who'd complained about a broken light like it was the end of the world. I sat there listening, smiling in the right places, while my mind replayed the feel of that paper between my fingers. Someone had been close enough to write my name, close enough to post it, close enough to stand outside our door and not be seen. That night I barely slept. Every time a car passed outside, I jolted awake. I kept my phone under the pillow like a weapon. My throat felt raw from breathing too fast. My shoulders were up around my ears, locked tight, and no matter how I shifted, my body wouldn't unclench. In the morning, I checked the street through the curtains before I even made coffee. The estate looked normal, wet pavement, bins, a kid in a school uniform running late. That normality made it worse. It meant whoever did it could blend in completely. At work, Jade was waiting for me, not in an obvious way. She didn't stand at my desk. She didn't corner me in the kitchen. She just happened to be everywhere I went. When I went to the printer, she was there, laughing with someone. When I went to the vending machine, she walked past behind me and brushed my shoulder like it was accidental. Around midday, she leaned over my chair and whispered, "I like your confidence." I didn't look up. My fingers kept typing, but I missed keys because my hands had started to shake again. I said quietly, "What are you talking about?" She smiled like she'd won something. "Relax. I'm not judging. I just think it's funny how people pretend they don't do things." My mouth went dry. I could smell her perfume, sweet and heavy, too close. I could feel the warmth of her breath on my ear. Then she walked away. I sat there staring at the screen, not seeing any of it. My heart was pounding, and I realized I was gripping the edge of the desk so hard my fingertips hurt. That's when it hit me. This wasn't one random subscriber. This wasn't some anonymous creep. This was someone who enjoyed the power of watching me sweat in public. I made it through the day on autopilot. I didn't use the bathroom unless someone else went in first. I kept my phone face down. Every time someone laughed nearby, my stomach clenched. On the drive home, I noticed a car behind me the entire way. A dark hatchback, headlights too close. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was a neighbor heading the same direction. But when I turned into our street, it turned too. When I slowed near my house, it slowed too. My hands were slick on the steering wheel. I could feel my pulse in my wrists. I forced myself to keep driving, past my own house, around the block. The car followed. I did another loop. It stayed. By the third loop, my breath was coming in short, shallow bursts. My chest felt tight. I was tasting metal like I'd bitten my tongue. I pulled into a small shop car park and sat there, engine running, staring at the rearview mirror. The hatchback parked 2 rows behind me. The driver didn't get out. They just sat. I couldn't see their face through the windshield glare, just a silhouette. I grabbed my phone and called Lewis with fingers that wouldn't stop shaking. He answered on the second ring, cheerful, like the world was still normal. I said, "Can you come outside?" He laughed. "Why?" "Please," I said, and my voice cracked. There was a pause, and then his tone shifted. "Okay, I'm coming." I sat there watching the hatchback. My stomach rolled. My skin felt too tight. When Lewis stepped out of our front door and looked down the street, the hatchback pulled out and drove away like it had only been waiting for that moment. Lewis reached my car, opened the passenger door, and asked what was going on. I tried to explain without saying the words. I told him someone had been following me. I told him I'd been getting weird messages. He frowned and asked if I'd done anything to provoke it. I shook my head too fast. My hair stuck to the sweat at the back of my neck. He said maybe I was overthinking, that it might be a coincidence, that people follow people all the time without meaning to. I nodded because I didn't have the strength to argue. I got out of the car and my legs felt weak, like they'd forgotten how to hold me. Inside the house, I locked the door and checked the windows. Lewis watched me like I was suddenly someone he didn't recognize. That evening while he cooked, I went to the drawer and took out the envelope again. My hands were steadier now, not because I was calm, but because something cold had settled in me. I stared at the screenshot. Then I noticed something I hadn't noticed before. In the corner of the image, barely visible, was a reflection, tiny, warped, like a ghost. Not my face, not a mirror. The reflection of a phone screen, and on it, a notification bar. It wasn't mine. It was someone else's device capturing my content from a larger screen. Like they'd been watching it on a laptop, then taking a photo of it with another phone. That meant the screenshot wasn't from the site. It was from someone's personal viewing, someone who wanted proof they'd seen me. I felt my stomach drop again, but this time it didn't turn into pure panic. It turned into anger, sharp and hot. I went upstairs, closed the bedroom door, and logged into the account. I scrolled through my subscriber list and messages, looking for patterns. I took screenshots of the threatening requests before they disappeared. I saved usernames. I wrote down dates. Then a new message came in. No profile picture, new account, same style. It said they'd sent the letter because I hadn't responded online. They said ignoring them was rude. They said I could make it easy or I could make it ugly. My breath caught. My hands went cold again. They asked for money. Not a subscription. Not content. Cash. A fee for their silence. And then they wrote something that made my blood run cold. They mentioned my mom's clinic, the private scan I'd booked, the location, the day, the time. My vision blurred for a second. My legs went weak and I had to sit on the edge of the bed. The mattress dipped under me. My phone felt heavy like a brick in my hand. They weren't just watching me. They were tracking my life. I tried to think. I tried to breathe. My chest felt tight, like it was full of wet sand. I tasted that metallic fear again. How would they know about my mom? Only a few people knew. Louis, my sister, my manager, because I'd asked for the morning off, the receptionist at the clinic, and Jade, because I'd mentioned it at lunch when she asked why I was stressed. I stood up so fast I got dizzy. The room tilted. I held onto the wardrobe handle until it steadied. Downstairs, Louis was humming while stirring a pot. Normal, warm, safe. I walked into the kitchen and looked at him. Really looked. His hands, rough from work. His shoulders. The way he didn't meet my eyes for too long lately, like he didn't want to ask questions. I wanted to tell him everything. I wanted to drop the secret on the table like a grenade and watch it explode, just so I wouldn't be alone with it anymore. But I didn't. Because the message also said something else. They said if I told anyone, they'd send the screenshot to my workplace group chat. I felt my throat tighten. My tongue went numb. We had a group chat, everyone in the office, managers included. Jade was in it. And suddenly I could see it, my phone lighting up at my desk, coworkers leaning over their screens, mouths open, whispers spreading like smoke. I could hear the fake sympathy, the jokes, the disgust. I could see my manager calling me into a meeting room with the blinds half closed. I could feel my life snapping in half. So I did the worst thing. I tried to negotiate. I replied, hands shaking so badly I could barely type. I said I didn't understand what they wanted. I asked why they were doing this. I promised I'd pay if they stopped. The answer came fast. They wanted £2,000 by the end of the week. Cash transfer. No bank trail. They sent instructions, like they'd done this before. Then they added one final line. They said they'd already told someone at work just to see if the rumor would spread. I stared at that line until my eyes burned, because that meant the paranoia wasn't in my head anymore. It was already out there. I didn't sleep at all after that. I lay on my back, staring at the ceiling, counting the tiny cracks in the paint, listening to Louis breathe beside me. Every inhale sounded too loud. Every exhale felt borrowed. My jaw ached from clenching. My hands kept opening and closing like they didn't know what to do without a phone in them. By morning, my body felt hollowed out, heavy but empty, like I'd been drained and stuffed with fear instead. I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. My voice sounded wrong even to me, thin and stretched. My manager didn't question it. That almost hurt more than suspicion would have. Louis left for his shift, kissing my cheek like usual. I stood in the doorway watching him walk down the path, his back familiar, safe. As soon as he turned the corner, my knees gave slightly and I had to grab the doorframe to stay upright. The house felt too quiet. I sat at the kitchen table, the envelope in front of me, my phone beside it, my laptop open. Morning light came through the window at the wrong angle, too sharp, showing every smudge on the table. My coffee went cold, untouched. My hands shook every time my phone buzzed, even when it was just a spam email. I replayed the last few weeks over and over, trying to trace the exact moment control slipped away. Jade's comments, the letter, the car, the clinic detail. I opened the work group chat and scrolled back, my stomach twisting. Old jokes, birthdays, complaints about the printer. Nothing obvious, nothing incriminating. And yet, the idea that someone might already know, might already be watching me walk around pretending everything was fine, made my skin crawl. Around midday, another message came in. Same tone, same bluntness. They reminded me of the deadline. They added that if I tried to disappear, they'd finish the job. I felt my breath stutter. My chest tightened so much I had to lean forward, elbows on the table, head in my hands. My palms were damp. My fingers tingled like they'd fallen asleep. I thought about paying. I had some savings left. emergency money, not enough for the full amount, but enough to show compliance, enough to maybe buy time, and then I imagined it never stopping. Another demand, and another. A moving line I'd never catch up to. Me checking my phone every hour for the rest of my life, waiting for someone else to decide if I was allowed peace. That was when something inside me finally cracked. Not loudly, not dramatically. It was quiet, like something old giving way. I stood up and walked through the house slowly, touching things as I went. The back of a chair, the wall by the stairs, the door frame where Lewis had marked his height years ago as a joke. Everything felt real and unreal at the same time, like I was walking through someone else's home. I went upstairs and sat on the edge of the bed. The mattress dipped under my weight. I stared at my hands, at how ordinary they looked, how much they'd been shaking for days. I realized I couldn't carry this alone anymore. When Lewis came home that evening, I was sitting at the table waiting for him. The envelope was between us, my phone beside it. I hadn't moved for hours. He knew immediately something was wrong. I told him. Not cleanly, not in order. The words came out tangled, my voice breaking, my throat tightening so hard I had to stop and breathe every few sentences. I told him about the account, about the messages, about the letter, about the money. I slid the envelope toward him with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. He didn't interrupt, he didn't yell, he just listened, his face going pale, his jaw tightening. When he saw the screenshot, his hand curled into a fist so hard his knuckles went white. He asked why I hadn't told him sooner. I said I was scared. He nodded once. Then he stood up, locked the door, and closed the curtains. That small action made me cry harder than anything else. My body folded in on itself, shoulders shaking, breath coming out in ugly sobs. Lewis held me, his arms solid around me, my face pressed into his chest. I could feel his heart racing too. We called the police. Saying it out loud felt surreal, like I was reporting something that had happened to another person. I showed them the messages, the letter, the usernames. I told them about work, about the car. They were calm, professional. They told me I'd done the right thing. They said this kind of thing happens more than people think. That sentence made me feel both less alone and deeply sick. Over the next days, things moved fast and slow at the same time. Accounts disappeared, messages stopped. The police traced one of the IPs back to a coworker, not Jade, someone quieter, older, someone who sat 2 rows behind me and barely spoke, someone who'd asked once, months ago, what I did on weekends. He was arrested for blackmail, possession of explicit material, harassment. When I heard his name, my stomach flipped. I had to sit down. My legs felt like rubber. At work, everything changed. There were meetings, whispers, people avoiding my eyes, some overcompensating with fake kindness. Jade didn't say a word to me. She barely looked at me at all. I took leave. Long leave. I shut the account down the same day the police confirmed charges. I deleted everything. Not because I was ashamed, but because I was tired. Bone tired. My body felt like it had been running without rest for months. Life didn't snap back into place. It never does. Even now, months later, I still check the street before I unlock the door. I still flinch when my phone buzzes unexpectedly. Some nights I wake up with my chest tight, convinced I've forgotten something important, something dangerous. But the silence is different now. It's real silence, not the kind filled with threats. What stayed with me most wasn't the fear of strangers online. It was learning how thin the wall is between private and public. How quickly normal life can turn into a stage. How knowing glances and polite smiles can hurt more than open hatred. I didn't lose everything, but I lost the version of myself who thought secrets could stay neatly contained, and I don't think I'll ever get her back.